I love bionics. You know, the $6 Million Man, RoboCop, and the like. Bionics is where they take inorganic parts and have them carry out human functions, sort of like quail in the White House. I once had a bionic cat, this is true. Had a little cute, furry, little bionic feline with an electronic purr and a remote control unit, but the cat still wouldn't come when I wanted it to. Scientists in England, this is also true, scientists in England have recently announced a bionic brain cell that mimics in many important respects the function of a human brain cell. But of course, it's just a piece of animated plastic, which again brings us back to quail. Well, I'm kidding. Speaking of body parts, perhaps the part of the body which has received the most attention recently is a part that generally receives a lot of attention anyway from girl watchers. I'm of course referring to the female breast and the implants which for many years have been used to enlarge and enhance breasts for varying reasons. Concern over the safety of silicone breast implants have now been raised. And after this break, we'll return with an attorney representing women who've experienced serious side effects from implants and a woman who underwent breast reconstruction. Back in a moment. And now let's meet our guests. Ken Moll is an attorney with the law firm of McDowell and Colantoni and a leading advocate for women who have experienced serious health problems from breast implants. Ken is also a member of the Breast Implant Litigation Group of the Association of Trial Lawyers of America. And Margie Bernard is a healthcare consultant and also a national trainer for the Why Me Breast Cancer Support Organization. Margie herself underwent a bilateral mastectomy and received breast implants 4 years ago, having had no problems since. Well, thank y'all both for being with me. Now, Ken, what is the current state of the FDA, what's FDA's current position on the implants? When will they make a final ruling as to the safety?
They may never make a final ruling as to the safety, but as of now, there is a 45-day moratorium. Right. In other words, Dr. Kessler has asked the manufacturers to stop manufacturing the implants, the silicone gel implants, and the physicians in the American Society of Plastic and Reconstructive Surgeons not to implant the silicone gel implants, just the silicone gel implants, not the saline implants.
Now, but is this a suggestion? This isn't, there's no penalty if they do continue to do it, is there? There's
no penalty. As of yet, however, Dr. Sidney Wolf from Public Citizen Health Research Group believes that any doctor that implants the silicone gel implants after the suggestion is possibly committing malpractice.
All right, now, briefly, can you run through us, Ms. Margie, the different kinds of implants that are available? There's a silicone.
Well, I think today the most common models that we're talking about are the implants that are first devised to have inside them soft silicone gel.
And actually, I actually have one of these I have in my hand here.
That's a very good illustration for the audience. The second type of implants that patients or individuals may be familiar with is what we refer to as a double-lumen implant. That is an implant that has an inner envelope that contains soft silicone gel and an outer envelope of saline.
So it'd be like this one here, and around it,
but
this would be
second
inside.
Envelope.
Okay.
The third type is the type that is now being mentioned by the FDA as an alternative during this period, and that is an implant whose composition inside is largely saline, or what the public knows as saltwater solution.
Now, when the implant itself, I think we have a slide here of how this works, that the implant is surgically inserted, here it is, right? It's surgically inserted within the breast.
There are typically two positions that may be used by a plastic surgeon who's implanting a device. Years ago, it was common to put the device right beneath the tissue of a woman's chest.
Right.
More commonly today, the plastic surgeon lifts up what we refer to as the pectoral muscle.
Okay.
And the implant itself rests against the chest wall with the pectoral muscle serving as a sling to help hold it in place.
That's the slide on the right we have.
Correct.
Here.
And
okay.
that leads to a better appearance on a post-op basis.
Okay. And now the silicone implants are generally considered to be more cosmetically effective. Is this true?
I think the term cosmetically effective may not be as suitable as what patients understand, and that is a goal to have near normal appearance of the breast on a post-op basis, whether the implant is placed for augmentation or enlargement purposes or reconstruction following cancer surgery.
Now, Ken, as far as you know, to what extent have implants, silicone implants, been actually tested?
There is to date no substantial long-term tests or studies conducted by the leading manufacturer of the silicone gel implants, that's Dow Corning Corporation.
Right.
They have been on notice that this might cause adverse reactions, and they have memos, internal memos, that it was alluded to by the New York Times just recently in the Wall Street Journal,
right,
that we could not talk about because these documents are under protective order. And one of the reasons why Dr. Kessler has asked for this moratorium, I believe, is so that he can lift this protective order.
And Dr. Kessler is?
The Commissioner for the Food and Drug Administration. He's the one who asked for the moratorium.
Right.
And the reason being, I believe, is to lift the protective order so he can see for the first time all the documents that were used to get a $7.34 million verdict in California when the jury saw the documents,
right,
a $4.5 million verdict in New York when the jury saw the documents, right, and a $5.4 million verdict.
Now, Ms. Margie, is this your understanding as well that there is no test?
I have to differ on this point,
okay,
because there's a mischaracterization of the facts. As a person who's been in healthcare administration for 15 years and who has worked extensively with the physicians and hospitals organizations, we have a tremendous array of scientific data that is out there, none of which suggests that for the patients who have implant devices, we have any evidence that they cause cancer in women, that they solely are responsible for autoimmune disorders, or that they trigger joint disorders or inflammation. I'm not telling you there are not women that have these
right,
disorders, but we're lacking firm data that is non-legal in nature and that is non-emotional, as people would appeal to a jury,
okay,
to show that scientifically these can be caused exclusively by implants themselves.
Now you know whence you speak.
Yes.
Could you briefly just give us your story?
Certainly. My own experience is that in 1987, I had a history of multiple breast masses that couldn't be seen in mammography. Because I had not one but 3 cases of breast cancer in my family, it was suggested as a surgical alternative that I undergo what's known as preventive mastectomies. I represent a silent majority of women around the country because the current controversy, as described by the FDA, would make it seem that only women with augmentation needs or women who have reconstruction needs after cancer are potential users of these devices. Since 1987, which was 4 years ago, I've had 4 years to nationally counsel women who are making decisions on treatment, and I think we're all amazed with this sudden information that we're being told is new coming from Dr. Kessler that suggests a strong pattern of problems. The entire healthcare community nationwide is extremely disappointed because we have established medical protocols that say if you have scientific data that suggests harm, this is brought into the public arena. You publish your studies, the New England Journal of Medicine, the Lancet, you subject this data to major medical centers to evaluate independently. And we've not seen such information forthcoming from the FDA or from the lawyers' groups. I'm not going to tell you some people haven't had problems,
right,
but the question is, can you say, are they caused by implants? That's a very difficult allegation to substantiate.
We're going to let you jump in here, Ken,
sure,
for just 1 second. We will let you jump in a second. But first, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with our guests. But so, your argument would generally be that the
Pass muster with the FDA.
Yeah. Well, now, you wanted to respond, Mr. Beck. You wanted to respond to what Margie had said.
Yes, with all due respect to Margie's response, it was a response that, with blinders up, when a lot of the public is unaware of the documents that lawyers have seen through the discovery and under protective order through the court file.
Okay.
And as I was alluding to before, jurors have seen that and have assessed punitive damages, not just compensatory damage. In other words, they have found that the actions of Dow Corning was so beyond the realm of their corporate policies as to be to assess punishment damages against the corporation. Now, what we're trying to do is lift that protective order, let the general public see these documents, and let them decide for themselves, and I think they'll be alarmed at what those documents allude to.
It seems to me that the hoopla or the mass of attention that has been attended to this issue is creating a lawyer's wet dream. That there's going to be suits just forever. People are going to be suing for all kinds of, every plastic surgeon is going to be just looking at giant lawsuits. Isn't this going to be the case?
We're not suing the plastic surgeons. We have yet to file a lawsuit against the plastic surgeons because we believe they're operating in the dark also. It's the manufacturers that did not share this information with the FDA, with the medical community, and therefore the clients are not making an informed consent. There has been a large experiment done on the women in the general public, and the women are being used as guinea pigs. And that's essentially what's been happening.
Margie, I'm just curious. Now, assuming that there's a ban, for example, let's say the implants are banned, silicone implants, what will be the effect on women?
I think there are some very tragic consequences that could be forthcoming from FDA policy, and we have to keep in mind that at a national level, it's the job of the FDA to safeguard the American public's health. What they have in fact done in this environment is create a very high degree of anxiety among the patients as well as the families. In terms of what may happen, first of all, we have 1990 American cancer statistics that show we now have 5.2 million women in our country who are part of early detection and treatment programs for breast cancer. I stress early detection because when breast cancer is found at the stage when it's still microscopic or extremely small, we're talking about a 95% cure rate. We are already seeing a pattern of women around our country. It's a technological move backward, where they are hesitant or refusing to come into physician offices for early exams, for mammograms, out of fear that reconstruction using silicone implants, which is the simplest and medically most safe kind of reconstruction, will not be available in the future. Now, many people will argue that there are other types of reconstruction that can be done. One of them is what we refer to as tissue transfer, where you take a segment of the woman's skin and create a flap to the chest or with the abdomen. Many people are not willing to acknowledge that these types of procedures carry with them a much higher surgical complication rate. They're much more costly with the length of time with the patient in the hospital. And I think it's important to realize I myself would not be a candidate for that kind of procedure because the procedure by definition suggests an excess of tissue in one part of your body that can be transferred. So these are some real dangers. If the FDA truly had safety information about their harm, we would immediately, and the lawyers would be part of this effort, would be wanting to have a ban nationwide on all devices that have silicone.
Do you agree with that, Ken?
There's an alternative to the ban, informed consent, procure an informed consent by the women. You have a silicone implant here and a saline implant here. We're missing the fact that there is a viable alternative. Saline implants. Tell the women that here is your silicone implant. It may cause human adjuvant disease, connective tissue disorder, autoimmune deficiency, scleroderma, and Sjogren's disease, cancer, and death.
You made your point. I'm with you now. What's wrong with women knowing?
I have to challenge the fairness of it because in our current way of collecting and analyzing healthcare statistics, we do not have a substantial body of information to make those allegations. We have anecdotal cases of what we're now told is 2,300 people, as opposed to 2 million women in this country who have very satisfactory experiences. That is 0.0001%, or 1 in 10,000. I realize Ken's concern, and I fully support informed consent when patients, especially women, make choices. But having been on the hospital side in our country for 15 years, I know the extremes to which physicians and hospital administrators around the country go through to sit down and tell patients the alternatives. The problem that you have with medical treatment is that often in the crisis of illness, much of what you give patients at the way of options at the time of surgery is overwhelming and more than a patient can disseminate at that time. Patients don't have the luxury to choose when they get breast cancer. They may have to make decisions in a matter of days or weeks. And our physicians, by and large, have done an outstanding job to say, here are the concerns. What is your choice?
Would you be sympathetic to perhaps a ban on say, silicone implants for cosmetic use, but have them still be available for medical?
No, that is totally inadequate, because if we're talking about taking breast implants and restricting their use in the future only to breast cancer patients as opposed to augmentation patients, first, and lawyers should be very sensitive to this, we're discriminating against women based on different classes of their rights. The second issue that's important is if 80% of the implants are currently manufactured for augmentation purposes, manufacturers will not have a sufficient volume of business to continue making the devices.
Ken, aren't you sensitive? Are you sensitive to the needs of women?
I wouldn't want Ken to help a policy be discriminatory.
Let's let him.
If there was no viable alternative, yes, I would be sensitized. But there is a viable alternative, saline implants. I don't understand why it is that we have to subject women to an experimentation by Dow Corning and the silicone implants when there is saline implants, which is made of saline solution, saltwater solution, what the body is made of.
Well, no, as I understand it, women aren't being forced to choose saline implants. I mean,
during this
silicone implants. No one is being forced to it. I'm sorry.
During this moratorium,
but they're not being given all the information. Okay. And one of the studies conducted by Dow Corning, and I can talk about it now because it was in the New York Times, is the fact that they conducted a study on rats that showed that the silicone caused cancer in those rats. Internal memos said we ought to look into this and do more studies. Were they done? No. There were also studies conducted by Dow Corning that says, hey, this silicone is causing an immunological response in the women. In other words, their body is looking at other body tissue as foreign and attacking it.
Hang on, Ken. You can jump on him in just a second.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. After this break, she'll jump on him. Just dive in there. You know, he can handle it. He's a tough guy. I'm kidding.
I have the same respect.
No, I know. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We don't really want any blood here. But you said you wanted to ask a question, Ken.
To Margie,
yes.
There has been shown through the silicone implants. You had mentioned you've had them in for 4 years.
Correct.
Some of the studies conducted show a latency period of 5 and as high as 25 years. My question is, what do you do when you start experiencing some of these reactions? Do you deny it as something in your history, or do you say, hey, there might be a problem with these silicone implants, I'm going to do something about it?
Well, I think certainly there's a possibility in the future that any person who has any kind of medical or surgical procedure may someday have a consequence or a sequelae from it. I think having been very carefully developed my entire professional career in the healthcare industry, I'm the person that stops and tries to rule out the more common kinds of things that may be causing this. Certainly many patients with breast implants today, the 2300 group that I referred to, are reporting what we call chronic fatigue syndrome, cases of joint inflammation. These are extremely difficult disorders to trace back to any one device that has been put in a person's body. And I think the lack of scientific data is something that people in the American public are concerned about.
Now you said, of course, that anybody who undergoes a surgical procedure risks certain reactions. Why are women risking this? What's wrong with, like, I don't mean to be flip, but like padded bras? I mean, you know, why risk a surgery?
Well, I think for many centuries, and certainly in the decades that I've been alive, there's a stigma where people think much of what a woman does to her body is for the gratification of other people in her life. When we talk about breast cancer cases or women who have had breast enlargement, we are talking about the important role in rehabilitation of restoring a woman's appearance to near normal after she has been through a major experience in her life, such as cancer. For people who have had augmentation, there's significant studies that these kind of devices, just similar to a person who would go out and have braces put on, who would have a nose straightened, who would have a facelift, it enhances their inner sense of self-esteem.
Ken, you look like you're chomping here.
95% of my clients did not know they had silicone breast implants. 95% of them did not know the reactions that would happen should they have the silicone implants. And they're just finding out. I'm getting calls on a daily basis of women saying, I didn't know that this silicone implant would cause my joints to hurt, cause me to be bedridden, and they're just finding this out. And the public has this is the beginning of the end of silicone implants as we see them. A lot more will come out in the future, and it will inform the women that there are a lot of risks they were taking with the silicone implant. The plastic surgeon was making the choice because it feels better.
Are we, I mean, is our culture putting, like, unreasonable expectations on women to appear in a certain way? You know, I guess, I mean, it seems like we're really into this whole breast thing as a culture, and it just makes you, when you look at some of the possible repercussions of the surgery, I mean, I guess this is kind of a call for an opinion, I guess, but I mean, isn't there something wrong about a culture that is so intent on having women with large breasts that we're willing to risk their lives for it?
We're paying our top models more if you have larger breasts. The public, the media, everywhere you looked, the models now. There was an article I read yesterday.
Dolly Parton.
Where, sure, Jane Fonda.
I mean,
Sure.
does this strike you as something slightly not right or no?
Well, I think it's very unfortunate that in American society, many young people today have a sense that their value comes from how they're perceived by others. But the issues...
I'm not sure it's limited to young people either.
Well, and it's not limited to women. We have many men who are going out and having pectoral implants put in.
Exactly right.
Calf implants, so if you don't have time to get to the gym, you can look like you've been there for a week sweating it out. I think a real concern here, though, is when we talk about risks, these are very safe devices, and when we compare them to other medical devices such as ocular implants, knee replacement joints, the safety profile of breast implants is unmatched in our country.
This is the same argument I heard with DES, thalidomide, and Delcon Shield, when it was later found out that they are very, very dangerous devices.
Well, I think one thing I've always been concerned about in healthcare, and you really have to stop and realize, poor outcome does not mean poor care. It does not mean the doctor didn't do his or her best, and that the hospitals didn't do their best, and the manufacturers didn't do their best.
Well, let me ask, now, there are lots of ads out for various liposuction and various cosmetic surgeries. Isn't this leading to a lot of surgery that doesn't need to be done?
I can't honestly comment personally on other types of elective plastic and reconstructive surgery. I have not had them myself.
Isn't there a lot of unnecessary surgery going on?
Sure. Unnecessary surgery, and with the silicone implants, an unnecessary risk.
We have to talk, though, about the saline alternative that Ken mentioned, because the American public needs to know that issue is not going to go away. The FDA is scheduling in spring a review of the saline implants. Are we going to relive this next issue?
Well, you know,
saline?
that question is where we will leave it. Thank you very much, Ken Moll, and thank you very much, Margie Bernard.
Thank you.
Very nice.
All right. Silicone gel breast implants may well be the worst thing to happen to women's health since men. There's certainly enough anecdotal evidence to warrant concern over their safety. At the end of the day, however, the operative word is, again, choice. If, given full disclosure of the risks, a woman chooses to go ahead and have an implant, I may not think it's so brilliant, but they are nonetheless her breasts. It is her health and her body. And I hope everybody will join us next week for Talking with Aaron Freeman.
Tomorrow night at 7, blast into action with those modern-day warriors, the American Gladiators. Then at 8, adventure takes its course with those Hollywood hotshots, the Stuntmasters. But now stay tuned. Marblehead Manor is next on Channel 50, WPWR TV.